training camp week. I don't even know what week it is. Probably week 3, week 2.5. Preseason game 1 is on Thursday, though, so that's exciting. Load the Box is back. It's Jordan and Will. We're getting excited. It's unofficial depth chart day today. So the Vikings released their first air quotes, underlined, italics, depth chart unofficial, I guess. There's a lot of things on there that we want to talk about. The other big thing this week is that there's a preseason game. And so we will talk about those couple things, maybe a couple notes at the end, and we'll get you out of here. So, Jordan, the big news of the day, unofficial depth chart, iteration 1 came out. First thing that popped off your head or popped into your mind when you saw that this morning?
The word unofficial was the first thing, and I was kind of, I think we discussed this earlier. It is ridiculous that Ivan Pace is listed as a third stringer. And as a UC homo whose wife went to the University of Cincinnati and whose sister-in-law goes to the University of Miami, where Pace spent 3 of his years, it kind of ticks me off a little bit. He's taking reps with the first team. He is clearly going to make the 53. Everybody's raving about him. You know, his big knock is like, oh, well, Jordan Hicks is better in the run game. And my response to that, assertion would just be like, did you watch Jordan Hicks play football last season for the Vikings? I think everyone was shocked when he got brought back, and I'm not campaigning that we cut Jordan Hicks. I'm just saying it would be nice that, let's just put ourselves in a situation here. Let's just say that we need a stop badly on defense. We have like a 2-point lead with like a minute to go. You probably don't want Jordan Hicks in that game. They're throwing the ball. Jordan Hicks is not covering anybody. I don't know that Jordan Hicks could cover Kyle Rudolph right now as they both stand. And Kyle Rudolph is an old man with old man legs. So you just want fresh legs. You want young guys. And he's just kind of balling out in camp. And I do think that maybe his listing on the depth chart is thinking more from a traditional, what does it look like when we line up in base package, whatever the base package is. And so maybe he is a third stringer in that sense, but I don't think it does justice to Ivan Pace that he isn't getting, he is being used a lot in different blitz packages, and he is being used a lot in creative ways by Brian Flores. So that was the first thing that jumped out to me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly, be devil's advocate to that. A couple things. Unofficial, you're totally right. The unofficial word that's added in front of depth chart. I think that's probably just pretty standard operating procedure. Preseason, you're not gonna be putting too many things out there that are in stone when you still have 90 plus players on the roster. Right. But what I will say for this, this regime, if you will, is last year proved that they're not just going to hand a job to someone because they flashed at one point or because they were a high draft pick. I know Ivan Pace was not even a draft pick, but, like the guys that they, took in the first round, second round, like Lewis Cine hardly saw the field. Andrew Booth didn't see the field much. So these guys are not going to just be slotted in there by nature or by virtue of, some sort of, narrative about them. And the other thing is they're going to make young guys earn their spot. And so that's pretty standard for these guys, I feel like. They're investing in young talent, but they're also, they're going to lean on the guys who they know can do it. And we can get into a whole Jordan Hicks discussion later. I was with you. I didn't think they'd bring him back. I was surprised that they did. But the one thing that I think is actually very interesting, though, thinking about the depth chart, is that something that Kevin O'Connell said last week was how I think somebody remarked how specifically Ivan Pace was taking first-team reps. And then maybe the next practice, Makai Blackman was taking first-team reps, and then, Joanne Williams was on the third team, and so the reporter was showing some confusion to that, and O'Connell basically said, yeah, Flo just said, let's mix it up. And so there's sort of just a notion of let's give people different looks against different different offenses. So like, let's go make Makai Blackman guard Justin Jefferson and just see how it goes, and let's make Ivan Pace cover Alexander Madison in the flat and see how it goes, because you want to see how these sort of back of the depth chart guys are going to fare if they do then get their shot. So, just because guys like Ivan Pace are getting first team reps doesn't mean that they are going to be a starter. So I think in that vein, first team reps don't mean anything by themselves. Neither does their unofficial depth chart placement. So it's sort of, I bet in some ways it's fun for the coaches to watch the media and the fans just like go crazy over this stuff, because we're trying to speculate, and in their head they're like, this means nothing.
Right. I feel like I want to point this out. You mentioned earlier when you were listing like some of the experiments that the coaching staff might be conducting here, and you said Makai Blackman versus Justin Jefferson, and that has like when a toddler does experiments and they're like, what will happen if I throw a battery at my dad's head? And they're like, they're like, what's going to happen? Oh my God, he's pissed off. How did that happen? Like, it just feels like one of those, like, I'm assuming Justin Jefferson is cooking just about everybody that's out there. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up. Again, unofficial depth chart. Jordan Addison is technically a second stringer. He's not listed. It's not JJ and JA. It's JJ and KJ. And then I can't remember who the other second string wide receiver was, but Jordan Addison was one of them. I think that's interesting. Like you said, kind of owning his stripes a little bit. But regardless of which offensive team he's running with, it sounds like his camp is Adrian Peterson levels of exciting to watch. And I know Dustin Baker made that comment about, he had heard rumblings of, I forget what the exact quote was, but basically Addison is getting the same level of hype that guys like Percy Harvin and Adrian Peterson were getting in camp. And the way he's running his routes, the way he is moving with the ball in his hands after he makes a catch when they're doing, like full contact, it's impressive. And I'm really excited to see how they use him. And you also have to remember that like these depth charts, I feel like are like they just have to name two starting wide receivers.
Yeah,
I would assume the Vikings use a lot of 3 wide receiver sets this season if last year was anything to go on. And so I think Addison just going into that slot role and going out, I mean, just putting him anywhere, it just seems, I'm so excited about him and what he's going to be able to do. And it's funny that, a month ago everyone was all up in a frenzy about the speeding ticket and, oh my gosh, like, does he have character issues? Does he have, does he make bad decisions off the field? Is he going to be, and then he got into camp and he put his head down and he's really showing everybody why he was the number 23 pick, and the Vikings have had a lot of success drafting at 23 if you look at their history. So yeah. I'm hoping he can add to that lineage.
Yeah, it's Addison has already become sort of like a polarizing figure, which is a little bit strange considering the colorful history that this team has had and the colorful personalities and checkered backgrounds and off the field issues. You can't excuse driving that fast, endangering yourself and other people and all that. But of the scale of things that have been done off the field, that is one of the most minor infractions. And so, you don't want to enable it, but at the same time, it's not nearly as bad as some of these other things. And it's a little bit strange to me how he's already become this. In some people's eyes, I've seen on the X app, as they now call it.
Yeah, that's fun.
The player formerly known as Twitter. Some fans saying that it's already hard to cheer for this guy and things like that. And I don't really understand it, to be honest, but it is where it is. And I think he is going to be a player that is going to win people over. It already seems like he's got his head screwed on in the right direction now after that blunder. And it's we've heard nothing but good come from camp about this kid. So Yeah, he's a second string technically. Him and Jalen Naylor are listed as the second string.
That's what
To
we're
me,
thinking.
that just sort of bleeds. It's week 2 of training camp, and we got to make these guys earn their stripes. Because technically speaking, it looks like based on how they have it typed out, Jalen Naylor is technically the third receiver, which wouldn't really make any sense.
No.
And I don't think anybody's here going to try and convince you that Jalen Naylor is going to get more snaps than Jordan Addison. The other thing when it comes to the receiver stuff, and they even made note of this on the depth chart, that they listed it in 21 personnel, meaning fullback and tight end and 2 receivers. So you're only going to have 2 receivers. That's just the way they listed it. But if you look last year, KJ Osborne started half the games.
Yeah.
It's simply like starts in the NFL are so much different than starts in the NBA, for example, because in the NFL, it's totally just based on like, what play are you running?
Right.
And what's the formation you're lining up in on the first play? You could get the 49ers could go out there in their first play of the season and they could be in like, 22 personnel. And they just have Deebo Samuel and 2 backs and 2 tight ends, and it's completely normal. And then you'd end up with Brandon Ayuk not getting a start. And it's not,
Right.
it's totally just random. So I wouldn't read into that too much if you're looking at
Absolutely.
the receiver depth chart. The one that I thought was a little bit interesting was, no, I guess not so much on the. It was actually on the defensive side. I was looking at the defensive backs. Where are they? The cornerbacks. Sort of how low Makai Blackman is, I guess. I'm not surprised, I guess, as far as like, this whole sort of trajectory we've talked about of, earn your stripes, rookies are going to be behind the second-year guys, and so on. So in that sense, it makes sense that Booth and Jawan Williams are ahead of him. But it sort of it stood out to me, I guess, as, we haven't heard much about this guy in camp. We haven't heard a ton of good or bad, really. But, he's clearly a guy that needs to sort of get there. I think we have hopes for him sort of as like okay, we need somebody to get there to to become a rookie or a young defensive back to actually make it on this roster. And so in a way, it was sort of a reality check of like, okay, just like all these other young guys, he's got to earn his stripes. But again, in the same vein, probably can't take it too literally.
Yeah, and I'm trying to both be angry about the depth chart while also taking in what you're hearing being reported from the inside of camp. And Blackman, it feels like you haven't everyone is saying that like Brian Asamoah had like a really, really good day of practice today. We're recording this on Monday, so like on Monday, Brian Asamoah, excuse me, had a really good day of practice, and like that's good. I feel like we haven't heard the Makai Blackman, popped off today and had 3 interceptions and just looked like a baller. But I also feel like we haven't gotten the Makai Blackman just got toasted by N'Keal Harry report yet. And so, that's kind of important. And of course, that's my way of sprinkling in the news that the Vikings, they signed N'Keal Harry, and I doubt he makes the 53, but
former first round pick.
Jaren Hall has to throw to somebody in Seattle on Thursday. That's
true.
That's really what it comes down to. So, and the wide receivers are kind of banged up right now, so a lot of them aren't going to be playing. And I don't want JJ to even go to Seattle. I want him to just stay in Minnesota and work on that contract. But I do think that Makai Blackman is just kind of having that. He's there. He's developing. And I do think the coaching staff has some trust in him. Again, I know the coaching staff is saying, like, we just kind of are mixing and matching and trying to see what works and what doesn't. And they kind of have that freedom because they don't have a defensive back on the team, a cornerback specifically that they're paying, top 5 in the league money or anything. Like, obviously Harrison Smith starts with the safeties, but other than that, like, they can kind of do whatever they want with the safety position. They can mix Jay Ward in. They can put Josh Metellus in there in the big nickel. They can do all of these things if they wish or if they want to. But I do think Makai Blackman is going to see the field this year. I unfortunately, even if he doesn't like stout the first few games, I cannot trust a Caleb Evans to stay healthy. And same goes for Andrew Booth. And so we kind of have these two defensive backs. Caleb Evans kind of looked all right last season, but he just kept getting concussed, and that's serious stuff. That's not like, with Andrew Booth, at least his thing is he just like, he hurts himself in different ways. It's not concussions. It's like it's an arm. It's a ligament. It's something something like that. And so with Booth's history of needing surgeries, and with a Caleb Evans in history of being aggressive and banging up his head a little bit too much, I do think Makai Blackman will end up seeing the field. And I guess I don't
for sure.
The jury is still very much out on Makai Blackman. I don't think we can.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be getting too excited, but I don't think we should be like, oh no, not this guy. Not he can't come in the game. There's no way. And so we'll have to wait and see how he plays. Maybe he'll make some plays in the Seattle game, and that can kind of get the hype train rolling a little bit. But he kind of reminds me, and I kind of want to get your take on this. He reminds me a little bit of like, and this is a weird comp, but like Kellen Mond, how everyone was so excited about like Kellen Mond, and I know it's different because Kellen Mond was a quarterback and he's a defensive back, but just the way that everyone, as soon as he came in the league, had like expectations on him, and it was like, okay, like you're the future now, you're the guy, and then he wasn't good, and everyone like got really discouraged. Makai Blackman kind of reminds me of that because it feels like there were a lot of pundits. Did I say that right? Yeah, pundits.
Pundit.
Yeah, a lot of pundits that were saying, like, oh, I would expect him to stout next to Byron Murphy, and I would expect him to, do all this stuff. And it's like, he was a mid-round draft pick. Let's not blow this out of proportion. So, I don't know. That's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to the draft, you're going to get so much hyperbole because, you're looking at these guys' tape up against college players. You're not looking at it against professional players. And there's just going to be hyperbole because people get really excited about draft time, because everybody is a, mystery box, and you think sky's the limit, or you always think ceiling. And so it's hard to think about it in terms of like, how he's going to fit into the roster and who he's actually going to be competing against, because I can guarantee you that most of the pundits, nationally at least, are not going to be thinking about a Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr. They probably forgot they existed. They probably forgot that they were even there. And so when they hear, oh, Vikings got a cornerback, he's probably going to start, because Evans got hurt, missed a lot of time. Booth got hurt, missed a lot of time. And so these guys that, maybe showed a little bit of flash, especially in Evans, they're going to be forgotten because Evans was a 4th-round pick and not a big name. And so you're not going to get a lot of attention on them. So a national media person who sees Makai Blackman, ooh, he's from USC, he guarded Jordan Addison in practice every day, that must mean he's going to be, and there's, I think, reasonable hope for this guy. I think he's someone that I'm hopeful and I'm excited to see on Thursday. But I think they forget about guys like Evans and Booth and even Juwan Williams, who has gotten a lot of praise from his coaches. So sort of a New England Patriot cast aside.
Yeah. I think it go ahead.
No,
I was going to say, I think the draft, and I get it because like I bring it up a lot on this show, but I do play Madden, and I like to like run franchises in Madden. And there's always this thing in Madden, like I'll take a quarterback in like the 7th round. And I'll be like, oh, well, he's like the new toy. And so I want to play with him more than I want to play with like, Cousins or Matt Ryan or one of like the older quarterbacks. And it's like, yeah, I'll just replace him with a 55 overall nobody, and I'll cheese the game enough to like hype him up. And so I think there's that like new toy factor.